Well, let's see how much of this movie I can show in this review. Hello everyone and welcome to Rewind Reviews. In this video I'm taking a look at a movie that very nearly didn't get a proper release, and that is the reboot of the Toxic Avenger. Initially shown in 2023 and officially released in 2025, the reboot of the 1980s splatter-fest film series sees a horrible toxic accident transforming a downtrodden janitor called Winston Gooze into a new evolution of hero, the Toxic Avenger. Written and directed by Macon Blair, the movie stars Peter Dinklage, Louisa Guerrero, Jacob Tremblay, Kevin Bacon, Taylor Page, David Yao, Julia Davis and Elijah Wood. I can't lie, this isn't the usual kind of movie that I would normally go and see in the cinema. I'm alright with gory movies nowadays, but it's not something that I enjoy. That sounds weird. I never quite get the fascination that people have with gory stuff. Oh, it's dead gory, it's proper good. Why? Just because something is gory, graphic and violent does not mean that it's good. It's not an indicator on quality. Anyway, but despite that, this actually did look quite fun. And because this movie had so much trouble finding a distributor, I kind of wanted to help support it. And fortunately, it actually was good. Now, no, I wouldn't say that it was an amazing movie, and I wouldn't really say that it was great either, but that's just me. This is a movie that delivers exactly what it promises. A superhero monster splatterfest with humour, horror and heart. It has a really good emotional core as well as plenty of body horror related scares. And on top of that, this has a twistedly graphic sense of humour. And it was a load of fun. The Toxic Avenger is not a sequel to those original films, it's a rebooted origin story that sees a cleaner who works at a shifty company falling on hard times whilst caring for his estranged son. But in a cruel twist of fate, Winston Gooze accidentally gets caught in the wrong place at the wrong time and dumped in a vat of toxic waste. But instead of killing him, it transforms him into a new form of superhero, with powers he uses to fight crime and get revenge as the Toxic Avenger. This plays out like a superhero origin story, and it does play into a lot of the tropes and cliches that you do expect from those films. Establishing the main character, setting up the big powerful antagonist he'll go up against later, the accident that gives them powers their first save as well as news coverage. It hits on and touches most of those cliches in some manner, but it's often done in a much more satirical, sometimes grizzly way. It pokes fun at what we've come to expect from the average superhero movie origin story, both plot related and character. It's not unlike Deadpool, but I wouldn't say that this was a full-on comedy, and neither is it a parody either. It feels much more in line with things like Kick-Ass and Super. And just to clear it up, just in case you were wondering, this movie is not connected to anything Marvel or DC related. It's completely its own thing. When it comes to the characters, they often echo or play out like a twisted version of characters that we often see in superhero films. Some may feel a little bit cartoonish, but I do think that they do fit into the vibe of this world quite well, and some of them are actually pretty good, and it looks like everyone was having a load of fun when they were making this. Kevin Bacon and Elijah Wood especially as the two central antagonists. Bob Garbinger and his creepy brother Fritz. I love that name. They are so enjoyable to watch, and they utilised in this extremely well. Kevin really hams it up as this really self-absorbed narcissistic head of the company that Toxie works for, complete with a wig and bathrobe. And Elijah's character feels like a weirder version of Danny DeVito's Penguin, complete with his own heavy metal band. I really like the supporting cast as well, such as Taylor Page as the wild card, JJ Doherty, Jacob Tremblay as Winston's son Wade, David Yao as Guthrie Stockings, and I thought Julia Davis was fun too as Garbinger's associate. But the real standouts of this movie have got to be Peter Dinklage as Winston Gooze and Louisa Guerrero as Toxie. Peter plays the real human version of Winston and provides the vocal performance after he becomes Toxie, but Louisa takes over as the body, and she's the one who spends the majority of time on screen. Both of their performances combined really help bring this character to life. He may sometimes feel a little bit cartoonish and act a little bit odd, but both of their performances really help find ways of humanising Winston. There's some genuine humanity and there's a proper emotional core that's highlighted through his actions and desire to be a good father. It really took me back just how good that element of the movie was and how touching it could be at times. You really grow to care about this character, and I think they've done some really great work here. The humanity he has, the vulnerabilities he has, it's all excellent, and I think it's done it in a way that really helps you sympathise with him. Peter does some excellent work as both Winston and the voice of Toxie, but Louisa does a huge amount of the heavy lifting. She is the one on screen for the majority of the runtime, and it sounds like Louisa had to do a lot of research on Peter Dinklage in order to get the performance just right, and it's really paid off because her performance is brilliant and you would never think that it was another person. She is honestly fantastic, and she is just buried under some really heavy and thick makeup, but it's not so restrictive that her performance can't come through. Even if the ADR can be a little bit mixed at times, I do think that both of their performances are really great and they both help bring this character to life. I've got to be honest, The makeup effects that they use throughout this are actually pretty decent for something that is essentially a B-movie. The Toxie look is actually pretty detailed, and I love how it glows purple after the accident. And I've got to be honest, when it comes to the transformation sequence when Winston becomes a Toxic Avenger, that might be one of the most visually creative transformation sequences I've seen in a superhero movie in a good few years. There is definitely some budget restrictions, and I do think that is obvious in a few instances. It does feel like a low-budget film, and that is reflected in the set design, some of the costumes and the visual effects. But I don't see that as a negative. In fact, it's actually a benefit to the overall look and style. It adds some grit, it helps keep it feeling grounded and realistic even with a really out there premise. It has an old school kind of vibe to it that I quite liked, and it forces the filmmakers to think outside the box. I do feel like the CG effects could look a little bit better in a few sequences. There's a few bits that look a little off, but it's not overused. CG is only used in this movie when and where necessary, and this is usually during the scenes where Toxie is let off his leash. Yeah, this is the stuff that I don't think I can show too much of. Everyone calls this movie The Toxic Avenger, but the full-length title is The Toxic Avenger Unrated, and it wears that title like a badge of honour. This is horrifically violent at times and does not shy away from some really gory and nasty elements. If you have no idea what a splatter-fest is, you definitely will after this. And it isn't just like bloody and gory, there's actually a sequence where it turns out that Toxie actually has acidic pee, which doesn't at all come into play in a really disgusting scene later on in the movie. Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, it's creative, I'll give him that. And there's even a thing that Toxie's able to do where he's able to like pluck out his eye and use it to look around corners. As you do. I'm starting to understand why the distribution company is called Bloody Disgusting. No joke though, some of the goriest sequences in this movie do have some actual creativity, and they are quite clever as well, which is a really weird thing to say. This is quite a nasty movie, so I do think if you are quite squeamish, this probably isn't going to be for you. Just like the cafe sequence on its own, that was grisly, where Toxie walks up to one of the robbers and just smashes him across the face and takes his jaw clean off. And that's in the trailer. I can definitely understand why this had so much trouble finding a distributor. This was initially set to be released back in 2023, but because of the gore, because of how over-the-top graphic it was, no company was comfortable distributing it. Fortunately, Bloody Disgusting stepped in to help distribute this movie, and they're the same company that brought Terrifier 3 to the big screen. So thank you, Bloody Disgusting. But even with all that said, there is a really dark sense of humour that stops it from feeling overly aggressive. It can be quite cheeky at times, and as I said earlier, it's quite satirical as well. It's not the funniest movie I've seen this year, but it is fun. It's absolutely absurd at times, but there's several scenes that will get a smile out of you, including probably the weirdest post-credit scene I've ever seen. I honestly sat there in a cinema watching this thinking, I have no idea what's happening. To be honest, there was quite a few weird editing choices throughout this, but I think that's just part of the style that the filmmakers wanted. The soundtrack from composers Will and Brooke Blair I thought was alright. There's nothing too noteworthy about the soundtrack, but I do think that it does fit the tone of the movie quite well, opting for something more rock and metal oriented. It's quite punchy and grungy at times, and I do think that it does give the movie a little bit more of an edge that kind of echoes things like Grindhouse. And I thought it was okay. Plus, the metal band that do appear throughout this movie do get a few original songs of their own, and they're weird, but suitably so. But overall, I do think the soundtrack was okay. I completely forgot to say earlier, had I seen or read any of the original Toxic Avenger movies, TV show, or comics? Nope. This was my introduction to the character, so I can't say if there's any references or callbacks to any of those earlier projects, but I do think that fans will be happy with this. And as an outsider with no knowledge of these characters or this world, I had fun with it and I did enjoy it for what it was. So I think that you can go into this movie pretty much blind, know nothing about the characters, the world, anything, and have a good time. Overall, I wouldn't say that this was a particularly great movie, and it does have some problems, but I did have fun with it. This is a really entertaining throwback B-movie that knows exactly what it is, what its audience wants, and makes the most of it. It's quite funny, it's gory, it's got a great cast involved with good performances, the effects are not bad, and it has actual heart. Now, I wouldn't say that this is a must-watch, and believe me, this is not going to be for everyone, but if this is your kind of movie, I think you'll have a blast. I don't think this is a movie that I'm going to be rewatching anytime soon, but I did enjoy it for what it is, and I'm glad I got to see it. So with all that being said, my rating for The Toxic Avenger is a 6 out of 10. Well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. If you've seen The Toxic Avenger, let me know down in the comments what you think about it, which movie in the franchise is your favourite. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future Rewind reviews you would like to see me do in the future, let me know down below. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. See you guys.